We actually fund ourselves and then work out what dividend is needed to pay. So we kind of work. It's a great business to be in, central banking. You print money and people believe it.
So I like the way you present everything. Yeah, I think the dam to break is realizing that the people in power are at least neutral and don't care about us, and at worst, they have disdain for us.
Go yourself.
And I think about my own friends and family and why I can't get them to necessarily see the world the way I see it, and I usually reverse engineer it to that. They generally think, well, I know the politicians lie, I know the media lies, I can't think of any specific examples, but broadly I will say that, and I think they're doing the best they can. And that's the thing. And once that breaks and you do start looking at all these things as more coordinated, we're not afraid of the dirty word conspiracy around here. But I do say a lot of the time, conspiracy is just good business. It's various business interests winking and nodding, saying, this is going to work out great for us. And it doesn't have to be more complicated than that. If you want to see them all in a room together, I guess I would look at who goes to the Bilderberg meetings, but you don't even really have to. And just because the way the show is split, before this first hour is over, I really want to fold in what you present as a solution. The full title of your book is Fiat Food, Why Inflation Destroyed Our Health and How Bitcoin Fixes It. And now myself, I am cautiously optimistic about Bitcoin. I do follow the leading thinkers in that space, but I tend to stay in the Bitcoin closet because I know this audience is thoroughly red-pilled, but not so much orange-pilled. And I think we just get lied to so often that people have grown cynical, and many people see this new currency emerge with an anonymous founder, and they think, well, that's a red flag. Maybe it's a cover for DARPA or some NSA project. They're concerned about central bank digital currency and the individualized control being proposed through digital means. And we don't need to go over Bitcoin 101. There's plenty of that out there, but you say returning to any hard currency would definitely help. Bitcoin just happens to be the best and an improvement on everything gold did for us. Help make that case to the Bitcoin cynics. How do we present the facts that it's better than gold?
Okay, so I am not a cryptocurrency expert, and I'm not an economist. So I arrived at Bitcoin because you're right. Any hard currency would work. But the reason I would advocate for Bitcoin is because historically gold, what you see happen over and over again is that while its supply is good in that respect, it goes up by 1 to 2.5% in general a year. What you find is that people begin putting gold in banks, and then they get the promissory notes. That's how money began. It was notes that said I had X amount of gold in the bank. I could bring my note to the bank and get my gold. It was just a note that certified what I had, a receipt essentially for my gold in the bank.
Gold's heavy, paper's light.
Right. So historically, over and over again, what you see happen is a lot of people put their gold in the bank, they get their receipts, and then over time, the government's like, actually, the gold's now ours. You get to keep the receipts. We keep the gold. You have Roosevelt doing this. You had it happen in Australia, Great Britain. You had a scenario even where Mussolini convinced Italian housewives to exchange their gold bands for steel bands as a sign of patriotism. So you find that this happens anytime that there's a national emergency or perceived national emergency. This has been tried throughout history. It always meets the same end. Bitcoin, in my understanding of it, is it changes that trajectory because unless the government can go to everybody's houses or literally shut the internet down, it just has a very difficult time confiscating Bitcoin, because if you're non-custodial, meaning that you own your own Bitcoin and you have your own private keys, which is a secret code that only you know, and you might have it physically written down on a piece of paper, they have to come to your house.
Oh, this is that crypto shit.
So if you have your Bitcoin in custodial merchants, it could actually suffer the same fate as gold. But my argument would be if people own their Bitcoin own their own keys, that safeguards it against that. But at the end of the day, any hard currency that the government couldn't seize would work, because it's not so much the solution as in terms of a hard currency, but what it does to the fiat money printer. The fiat money printer and the distortions it creates is at the heart of why our food policy has been distorted, which I would argue is the most consequential crime of the century in terms of its impact on human health. Go to any Walmart in America and look at the line. People are sick, like they're metabolically compromised, and it's sad. It's awful. We would end the distortion when we end the Fed. The most effective way to end a Fed is through a new currency. And I would argue that Bitcoin, based on my limited economic knowledge, and the people that I really respect, is the singular best way to end the distortions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that there might be a lot of potential criticisms, and maybe Bitcoin would open up new problems that we don't have now, that we aren't even aware of until it would be implemented. But it certainly would go a long way to solve a lot of what we've talked about. And deflationary was the term I was looking for earlier, mentioning Ethereum. And Ethereum has a burn, so there's literally less tokens. And I don't think, I mean, I know Bitcoin's 21 million, so it's not like there's any fluctuation in that number, but it's kind of deflationary in the sense that there's that meme going around about the price of a home in US dollars versus Bitcoin. I pulled it up. In 2016, a house cost $288,000. In 2020, $330,000. In 2024, $440,000. But in 2016, it was 664 Bitcoin. In 2020, 45 Bitcoin. In 2024, 6.6 Bitcoin. So the more people participate in that ecosystem, the cheaper things get, because it's more people that 21 million is divided up amongst, and it can be broken down forever. I think people get really locked into $1, one Bitcoin. How am I going to get one Bitcoin if it costs $70,000? You don't need that. It just gets cheaper and cheaper, and you start working in the equivalent of pennies instead of the equivalent of Bitcoins. You would use Satoshis, and it'd be like, well, for just, X number divided by even more and more, 0.0001 Bitcoin is now worth more than it was before. And, I am kind of a fan of this space. I like Michael Saylor. I like a lot of people who talk here. I got invited to the Bitcoin conference to cover it with a press badge, even though I didn't really do much and I didn't really talk about it very much. It's probably over both of our heads to really get into the technical analysis on if it could really do what it claims to do. But when you say that when you buy Bitcoin, you take a little jab into the ribs of the Federal Reserve, I like that. And I think that's probably a good way to think about it. Can you believe it, people? A video clip and a peek into how that sweet THC sausage is made. For some people, I'm sure it's nice to put a face to the name, so I started making clips that are a little more YouTube friendly than the full show tends to be. Get the full show on any podcasting platform. I prefer to keep it audio only, so we have a more decentralized distribution for a controversial show, and also so I can edit out the ums and ahs and barking dogs and all the things that happen when a person records in their home environment. And then if you really like the show, you can sign up for THC Plus, and instead of 1 hour interviews, you get the full 2 hour interview for just $8. I think that's a better deal, more of a win-win than asking you to support the show by booking a therapy session or buying generic Viagra. It's getting weird out there, folks. So just go to the highersidechats.com or click the link at the top of any set of show notes, and all your wildest dreams will come true. All right? All right. The Higherside Chat Show.